ईयर्स से जिस तरह से हमने कोविड को बीट किया और इकोनॉमी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से हमने ग्रोथ दिखाई, आई थिंक द स्पॉटलाइट इज क्लियरली ऑन इंडिया एंड द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी देन ऑन द गवर्नमेंट बिकम्स इवन मोर, क्योंकि इस बार बजट में एक्सपेक्टेशंस भी शायद ज्यादा है। इंडिया की ग्रोथ के बारे में क्या हम एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं और किस तरह से ग्रोथ मोमेंटम आगे बनता रहे, ये जानने की कोशिश करते हैं। मेरे साथ इस वक्त पापा एक पैनल है, संजीव बजाज प्रेसिडेंट CII, संजीव पुरी वाइस प्रेसिडेंट CII, आर दिनेश प्रेसिडेंट डेजिग्नेट CII एंड चंद्रजीत बैनर्जी सर DG CII। बहुत बहुत स्वागत है आप सभी का टू स्पेयर टाइम एंड टॉक टू अस। स्ट्रेट अवे सर, ओपनिंग द क्वेश्चन, बजट से इस बार क्या एक्सपेक्टेशन है? क्लियरली सरकार ने किया बहुत कुछ है ऑलरेडी, बट हाउ डू यू मेंटेन द मोमेंटम इज द की थिंग। तो क्या देखना चाहेंगे फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर से इस बार के बजट में? यही क्वेश्चन मेरा पहला तो सभी के साथ होगा। लेट मी ओपन विद संजीव बजाज।
Thank you, Swati. If you look at the budgets of this government in the last few years, budgets have all been progressive. They've been about economic development and providing greater stability to the country. And that is what we would like to see continue. So starting with, stable fiscal management is going to be key, because India has this tremendous opportunity over the next 10 years, both on the manufacturing and services side. And we need to ensure that in a world which is still reasonably uncertain, if we continue to offer resilience and macroeconomic stability in our country, inflation stays within the range that is comfortable, it will help us in attracting that much more investment. So I would say that is one key area. The next, and this is something that the government has done the last few years, and we hope they will continue, is a investment-led growth strategy. Last year, the budget increased allocation by 35% to public capex, and we hope they do the same this year, taking it to 10 lakh crore. Eventually, this helps keep the economy going. It creates more jobs. It eventually results in greater consumption. And that takes me to the third point, that we have to continue to boost consumption demand. The recovery that we are seeing currently is very much a K-shaped recovery. So when you have the upper middle class and the higher segments, they are growing quite well. But the low middle class has got impacted by the pandemic. Inflation has hit their pockets harder. And hence, we are recommending a rationalizing of personal income tax slabs for them. This will put more money into their pockets, and we think this will help. So these would be some of the initial points that I would expect.
Okay, so clearly momentum continue हो, जो फोकस सरकार का अब तक रहा है उसी डायरेक्शन में हम आगे बढ़े. बट एज यूर सेइंग, मिडिल क्लास, द लार्जर चंक ऑफ आवर पॉपुलेशन, उसको एड्रेस करने की यहाँ पर बात है. डिस्पोजेबल इनकम्स अगर हाथ में आएंगी तो इकोनॉमी ग्रो करेगी, विच इज अ फेयर पॉइंट. संजीव पुरी, मैं आपके पास आना चाहूंगी. आपके पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, सिंस वी टॉक ऑफ द रूरल सेटअप, द सेमी अर्बन सेटअप, यहाँ पर कितनी जरूरी है ग्रोथ को पुश करना? एज संजीव वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट हाउ कोविड हैज इम्पैक्टेड दैट सेगमेंट ऑफ द सोसाइटी मोर. सो यहाँ पर स्पेसिफिक इम्पेटस देने की जरूरत है.
So first of all, just continuing from where Sanjeev left it. So it is certainly that what we have witnessed in the past is a very clear and consistent strategy in the budget, with the whole objective to put inclusive and sustainable growth. And there are many interventions that have been made in the past. I think some of these, or really most of these, need to continue and gather more momentum, more resources. So that's the investment on infrastructure is one piece. And particularly in rural areas, particularly in the semi-urban areas, particularly in the last mile connectivity, I think this will certainly provide impetus to those pockets of the economy. I think manufacturing is another area that the government has been consistently focusing on, and there have been a fair bit of interventions, and I would say an appreciable progress or an appreciable success in that, if we look at some of the sectors that have progressed well. So from that perspective, I think there is an opportunity to build on some of these good interventions that have happened in the past, like the opportunity to broad-base PLI scheme to sectors that are more employment intensive, and these would kind of provide also opportunities into smaller areas, smaller towns. and semi-urban areas as well. So be it apparel, be it toys, be it footwear, these are areas. I think the intervention to provide a lower income tax on manufacturing for a period of time is also a very good step. Unfortunately, fair bit of time was lost during the pandemic. So can we have a larger window for that, so that now capacities are also inching up? This is the right time to provide that impetus. So these would help. I think the focus on agriculture needs to continue. Ultimately, these areas the economies are very much dependent on agriculture. 2/3 of the households are dependent on agriculture there. So building on the steps that have been taken, whether it's FPO, agri-infrastructure funds, they're bringing in modern technology to agriculture. I think we need to kind of continue investing in that. These are very much working. I think the building blocks are in place. It's a question of how do we accelerate this. And to support all of this, I think we also need to continue the investments increase investments in the social infrastructure.
Okay, so ये कुछ interesting points, and I think I really like the fact that you said कि manufacturing का क्योंकि इस वक्त capacity is up. Finally, the issue was underutilized capacities, इसलिए we were not getting newer investments, but perhaps now is the time कि यहाँ incentive देकर इस opportunity को grab करने के लिए industry को एक यहाँ पर relief दिया जाए. दिनेश, आपसे मैं जानना चाहूंगी आपकी क्या expectations है from Finance Minister. A lot has already been said by Mr. Bajaj and Mr. Puri, but anything further you want to add on to that?
No, I think just carrying on what had been committed from the infrastructure spend on Gati Shakti. Because I think in the previous budget, I think there has been a huge focus on making sure that 6 ministries of the government came together with one single digital solution. And that I think is also one large chunk of the capex side of it. And I think that's what will also make India an attractive base for manufacturing. And if I can say so, in between the budget and the current one, actually there has been a national logistics policy which has been announced. So if you look at bringing together both of these, meaning the investment on capex and making sure we have the right supply chain built across, I think with what I would call as digital solutions, because India could actually become a standout country from how supply chain is managed as a country rather than just as companies working together. The second element would be on the employment-linked incentive plan, which I think CII has made a comment on. And like the PLI scheme, already there is a solution laid out for providing incentives for increasing first-time job creation, so to say. Sectors like logistics, tourism are, and to a certain extent even filmmaking, animation, etc., are areas where I think there can be a significant uptake by providing focused incentives for job creation, which will also increase asset utilization better. These would be my two big, I would say, hope for the budget.
Interesting. Employment, creation incentive program. I think ये एक बहुत interesting suggestion है to the government. Let's see इस पर focus होता है क्योंकि government का भी endeavor है that they want to increase the employment going forward from here. CB, आपसे मैं जानना चाहूंगी, there's obviously so much and so many sectors that the government will have to see where and what they can do. तो अगर priority में रखना चाहे और जो sectors ज़्यादा neglect हुए हैं पहले, कहाँ पर आपको लगता है सरकार को continue focus रखना चाहिए, and some things that have been neglected perhaps in the past जहाँ पर इस बार focus देने की में भी जरूरत पड़ सकती है?
So expectations of budget, तो आपने सुना है, Swati, you have heard from 3 people. We have covered the entire of CII's pre-budget recommendations. But of course, capex, job creation. We spoke about, but let me come to your question as well as add a couple of points which probably I would not say which has not been done in the past, but which has been started very strongly focused in the past, and which has created a very strong positive sentiment जो हुआ है ना business माहौल में. So I would think उसको आगे लेके जाने का, business को encourage करने का एक बहुत ही एक we have a window जिसको हम कह सकते हैं, जैसे कि we I would like to see the continued focus on ease of doing business, and I'm talking about one particular area now. हम लोग बात करते थे कि decriminalization पे भी हमने गवर्नमेंट का हाईएस्ट से सुना है, कंट्री का हाईएस्ट से सुना है कि decriminalization होना है, बिजनेस को ट्रस्ट करना है. So हमारे पास 65,000 प्लस कंप्लायंस रिक्वायरमेंट्स है बिजनेस का. अगर इसका ऊपर हम ध्यान दें कि हम कुछ एक कोऑर्डिनेटेड अप्रोच देखें, जैसे कि कंसिडर कर सकते हैं कि क्रॉस मिनिस्ट्री कंप्लायंस कमीशन, जिसको जो रैशनलाइज करेंगे, डिजिटाइज करेंगे, डिजिटलाइज करेंगे सब कुछ को. इसका ऊपर हम कुछ देख सकते हैं. ये एक नया चीज होंगे बजट में. दूसरा आपका एक सवाल था मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का ऊपर. देखिए, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कैन नॉट स्टैंड अलोन. मैन्युफैक्चरिंग का काफी सारे कुछ चीजें के ऊपर हम बात किए हैं. फॉर इंडिया टू बी अ सिग्नल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग लोकेशन फॉर द वर्ल्ड, कुछ चीजें हमको कभी ना कभी शुरुआत करना है स्ट्रांगली. हमारे R&D स्पेंड अबिसमली लो है. आप जानते हैं ये 0.7% ऑफ द जीडीपी है अभी. दैट शुड गो अप टू 4% ऑफ द जीडीपी बाय 2047. सो आई हर्ड PLI to ELI, but can there be something which is linked to R&D for incentive? I would really like to see that, because that's going to be something new that can come up in the budget. And another area which is today suffering, and I will stop there after talking about 3 points. Anything beyond 3 doesn't go ahead. But one area which is going through problems today is exports. So I would see some focus on exports. So allocate funds for creating some sector-specific, industrial parks with some, again, world-class infrastructure, where the cost disabilities can be embedded, and overcome to a certain extent. Similarly, funds for developing districts as export hubs. So exports का ऊपर एक focus हम देखना चाहते हैं, क्योंकि because that will really make our see, we talked, Dinesh spoke about logistics. We talked about infrastructure. But exports is competitive till the factory gate. We have to make it competitive till it reaches the port. So that's how we can probably.
Fair enough. And I think the PLI scheme है, उसका purpose भी यही है, that eventually we are able to export to the world, and we are the ones who are the factory for the world for majority of the products. And I think abhi, of course, with the current global setup, things are looking tough, but I think addressing exports will be a very crucial thing also. Fair point. Quickly now, second round of questions to each of you. I think हमने ये तो बात की कि सरकार को क्या करना चाहिए. I think the interesting bit will be क्या वो ना करें. Sometimes, no news is good news. So, क्या है ऐसी चीजें जो they should not touch or tamper or tinker with, जो कि हमारी ग्रोथ रेट को डीरेल कर सके. Anything that you would not want the finance minister to touch upon? Sanjeev Bajaj.
Okay, that's an interesting question that you're asking, Swati. So let me think of a couple of points. One, I would say that don't continue to increase non-merit subsidies.
Okay.
Because while the government has to keep in mind what is required for the lower sections of society, but put more and more money into where it can be more productive. And secondly, I would say don't stop on privatization, don't stop on divestment, don't stop on increasing your asset monetization plans, because all this, one, gives a very strong signal that the government continues down its reform path. It is not the business of being in business. And secondly, it will give the government that additional revenue required to be spent in other areas. So these would be two of the points I would mention.
Okay, fair point. Sanjeev Puri?
Well, if I was to summarize it, I would say don't change the strategy and orientation of the budgets as we have seen in the last, that's very consistently clear, growth-oriented, investment-oriented. I think those fundamental tenets should hold. And the fiscal consolidation glide path compromised. These would be the two I would call out here.
Okay, so clearly, जो focus अभी तक रखा है वो continue रखेंगे, तो that's a good signal in itself. जिस तरह से bold and promising and reform oriented budget last 2 बार से दिया, I think वही अगर momentum continue होगा, I think by and large industry is saying it's good news. दिनेश, corporate tax में सरकार ने जो commitment किया था वो दिखाया. Long term capital gains की बात हो रही है. I mean, I just want to understand from you, कहाँ पर tinkering नहीं होनी चाहिए?
No, I think if you look at it, one of the recommendations which we have already made from the long-term capital gains is to make sure all class of assets which have similar characteristics, so to say, come under the same bucket. So I don't think it'll be fair for me to say that there should be no tinkering done at all, because you will need to make those changes, which I think we have ourselves recommended. So I would not say from a corporate tax perspective, I think what Sanjeev Puri already mentioned, because there was a special incentive given for a particular period. So to make sure that it is extended because of the COVID timeline to a slightly longer period would be asked rather than to say, not to be done. But I would say whatever has been the focus from a tax perspective has been great. And I don't think from CII side or from my personal side, I would say tinkering with that for the sake of tinkering makes any sense. But from long-term capital gains, I think to make sure that everything gets aligned is something which is we already recommended.
Okay, so alignment ho, rationalization ho rather in that space is what the industry demands. CB, आप कैसे देखते हैं क्या नहीं करे सरकार so that it doesn't disturb or derail our economy?
So मैं ये नहीं चाहता हूँ कि reforms, हम सब जानते हैं कि this budget is the last final budget before the election, last full budget before the election, so to say. So हम नहीं चाहते हैं कि इसके लिए रिफॉर्म्स में कोई रुकावट आए. सो सरकार ने पिछले 5 साल 7 आप देखते हैं एक ट्रेंड है रिफॉर्म्स का, और बोल्ड रिफॉर्म्स हम देखे हैं, तो उसको बंद ना किया जाए, उसको रिवर्स ना किया जाए फॉर एनीथिंग व्हिच विल बी पॉपुलिस्ट. समटाइम्स पॉपुलिस्ट मेजर्स आर नॉट बैड इकोनॉमिकली. जो बात हम कर रहे थे, कुछ देना है फॉर द लोअर स्ट्रेटा ऑफ द सोसाइटी एंड ऑल दैट, सो इट शुड बी प्रूडेंट. द सेकंड इज it should not be, I mean, we have never had, in the recent past, budgets which has hurt a particular class. It has been a budget for everyone. So everyone has gained from the budget. So let us not have anything draconian, which because you said कुछ नहीं होना चाहिए, some draconian tax वगैरह जिसका हम नहीं देखना चाहते हैं. So I would think, और तीसरा है कि budget है certainty के ऊपर. The globe, the world, the Indian industry looks at certainty, and I would think that the certainty should continue. I think that's important, that we do not give a shocker in the budget, that we are not continuing with the type of reforms and the type of path that we have.
Okay, no shocks really, and that's what will be a nice thing to happen. Quickly, एक last सवाल आप चारों से very quickly. 2023, very interesting year from many counts. हम कोविड से बाहर आए हैं, एक तरह से इंडिया promising destination दिख रहा है. We were in Davos and we were discussing on how we are the spotlight for the world. तो ये कई मायनों में हमारा decade कहा जा रहा है. This is our opportunity to really go out there and grab. And I think government to facilitate करे, industry को ये grab करना है. So how prepared are you? How ready are you? How is 23 looking with all the global uncertainties? कितना challenging होगा? I know it's easier said than done. There is, of course, as much concerns as well. Government to apna part play kariye, but industry kitni geared up hai to take on. Sanjeev Bajaj.
One, inflation looks like it's coming under control, and we have to keep an eye on it, but that should help spur demand. Second, China is opening up. By the end of this calendar year, I believe the world will see growth coming from there. Third, our banks, our NBFCs are very well capitalized, ready to lend. Fourth, policies from the government, very conducive. We hope it continues to be the same. Fifth, private sector is starting to see some green shoots. Some sectors are starting to see new investment, but many other sectors have seen high capacity utilization, so are ready to invest. As long as we are collectively able to see a stable growth path in the coming years, you will see this as the start of our completely new high growth decade.
Okay, new high growth decade. India's story shining really. Sanjeev Puri.
I would kind of just say I completely agree with what Sanjeev said. Nothing really too much substances to add. I think the industry is absolutely keen, and that's reflected in the CII surveys also, business confidence survey.
And ready to invest. Ready to invest.
Ready to invest, absolutely. We are already seeing green shoots and all of those factors that Sanjeev alluded to. I think that will support all of this. And I'm sure it's going to be India's decade. Some people have said not only decade, maybe the century. So hopefully it's going to be beyond that.
Okay, our generations will see it going ahead. Dinesh.
Yes, maybe only, again, I have to endorse whatever Sanjeev said. It is a comprehensive cover. But I think I just got to add just 2 points to it. One is, I think Indian corporates are actually ready to kind of take on the world stage. So I think it's not just the question of domestic investment, which companies will make, but also an ability to invest and grow internationally. And I would say seize this opportunity to really become, so to say, world-class players, world leaders, not just focused on India. The second, I think, is a huge geopolitical opportunity which we have, especially in our neighborhood, to take the leadership, which I think the government is very well aware of. So the internationalization is global, and I would call it local from a region perspective, to be able to take the lead and establish our presence in, whether it's rupee trade or whether it is ability to do business in a different way with some of the neighboring countries, and use that as, so to say, a further positioning of strength for the future. Only 2 other comments to what Sanjeev said.
CV, clearly ball is in the industry's court. Government ने तो करा जो करा और आप सबने acknowledge किया उनकी approach. So I think now the industry has to start batting and playing. Are we ready to really take on from here fully?
Indian industry is very competitive. It's very, very highly competitive. And given the enablers जो आ रहे हैं कि infrastructure में हम बोल रहे हैं कि बाकी सारे जो enablers हम देख रहे हैं over the last few years, that will, and today आप Davos का जिक्र कर रहे थे, and you saw and you looked at the main street of Davos, how much of presence of Indian companies you saw. You saw the household names of India present as household names for the world. So that's the type of ability Indian companies have. So I think with the enablers and with the government recognizing the fact that industry is employment creator, industry is wealth creator, I think it gives confidence to the Indian industry to take risks, and also to respond with the trust which is being bestowed on them. And I think these factors will go in a long way in seeing to it that Indian industry can actually take the risk, really play well with the ball on their court, and become champions, not just in India, but they would be champions for the rest of the world.
Wonderful comments. Thank you so much आप सभी का हमसे जुड़ने के लिए, हमें बताने के लिए किस तरीके की expectation है from the fastest growing major economy, जो केवल भारत के लिए नहीं, but I think for the world to see what this budget will promise to bring. Thank you so much for your time.
प्रायोजक पतंजलि गाय का घी, माँ के हाथ से बने बिलौने के घी जैसा शानदार और बेदाग सफर